Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, hosted and sponsored by GrandTheftWorld.com. It's August 28th, 2022. This is episode 95. Last week's episode was called The Fauci Effect, and the world found out what the Fauci Effect is. It's a disappearing act. Fauci resigned effective this December, this past week, and you would have thought that would have been the big news of this week, but no. There's so much news going on this week that we will be here for the next 6 or 7 hours, breaking it open, analyzing, deep diving, getting into primary documents and sources. We've got stories like Twitter whistleblowers. We got 14 FBI whistleblowers come out with respect to the Mar-a-Lago raid. We also have the unveiling, the releasing of the Mar-a-Lago affidavit, which if you are, for those of you playing at home, it was mostly redacted, heavily redacted. And that brought a lot of questions as to what's redacted and why things get redacted and what happens if those things were unredacted. Would people be able to make a more informed decision from those unredacted parts? So we'll find out. There's also more movement from the World Economic Forum on why you should eat the bugs. Klaus Schwab's going to talk about eating the bugs. Throughout this episode, I'm sure we have a clip from Greg Reese, which illustrates why maybe not eating the bugs will be good for humanity, good for freedom, good for you at home. So we'll leave that for your consideration. Also, getting to the bigger story this week, Mark Zuckerberg went on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he said the quiet part out loud. He let the cat out of the bag. He admitted that there was FBI persuasion at Facebook. They said, look, there's going to be some information coming out. We're going to tell you it's Russian propaganda. And then to back that up, the FBI and all the other intelligence directors, they came out and said, hey, there's 50 people saying it's Russian propaganda. I think there's a lot of heavy questions to be asked. And they started flying as soon as that clip started circulating. And we'll check that out tonight. But before we can check out all those juicy clips and more, we're going to go to our first clip tonight. It's a kickoff by Luke Rudowski of wearechange.org and thebestpoliticalshirts.com. Let's go to Luke Rudowski and let's see his summary of this week's news.
Looks like things are going very well for the people of Philadelphia, and someone left a very important comment underneath this video saying specifically, for the government to exist, the people must suffer. The bigger the suffering, the bigger the government, and I think that's been true almost everywhere. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Rudowski here of wearechange.org, and we have a plethora of absolutely crazy news to get into today, as we have some surprising, hopeful, optimistic news, some really strange, weird stuff to get into, as of course some transhumanists plan to live forever, while of course they plan on you living in Philadelphia. Yeah, big disparity there between what's happening between, the billionaire class and globalists and corporatists and everyone else. We're going to be getting into that with a specific focus on the World Economic Forum and their transhumanist fourth industrial revolution that they are currently building. Now, seeing the videos in Philadelphia, seeing the videos pretty much all over the world of the amount of increased poverty, of the amount of desperation, of the amount of people at food banks. The video that you're watching right now is, by the way, from Milan, Italy. It's economic capital where people are going down the blocks, many streets, in the hundreds, hoping to get some bread and milk for themselves and their family members. Now, if you go on YouTube or big tech social media, or if you watch the corporate media, a lot of these problems usually aren't highlighted. Usually our conversation here domestically in the United States is around absurd issues, just like this latest investigative piece from Vice, which is literally promoting adult diaper wearing. Yes, Vice News is literally putting out investigative, full-on stories promoting adults to wear diapers. This is the same news organization that, by the way, works hand in hand with the U.S. State Department and at the same time also gets promoted and has an unfair advantage on YouTube, as of course it gets played favorite in the algorithm over, of course, independent small media creators. It's also important to note that some of the biggest corporations, banks, and institutions in the world have partnered with Vice, and this is the type of degeneracy that they're literally pushing on everyone, and gee, we wonder why. Rumble, an alternative social media platform that allows users to upload their videos without the fears of political censorship, has just skyrocketed to the top of the app charts over Instagram, over YouTube, after of course having some significant victories in the culture war, allowing voices to be heard, not punishing their users for alleged wrongthink, and of course not doing the bidding of the national security intelligentsia, as recently openly admitted by the CEO of Meta, of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, that just told Joe Rogan in a very eye-opening interview that they banned a highly political story because of the advice that they were getting from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Mark Zuckerberg admitted that this was wrong for them to do, and in many instances, I wish Joe would follow up. I wish Joe would have asked more hard-hitting questions here, because this absolutely matters, especially when it comes to the context of the Federal Bureau of Investigations playing an extremely political role in our society, destroying free speech, destroying freedom of the press, destroying people's ability to find out what actually is happening for the political benefit of a few establishment elites. And as we're finding out from the FBI, this is not the first time the FBI is getting involved in politics and elections, and that they admittedly do this a lot. Now, when you look at the censorship of the Hunter Biden story, we have to understand that this was a coordinated effort by the FBI, the White House, the government, big tech social media companies, the corporate media, that literally all colluded, even though the evidence was right in our face, even though anyone at any time could have verified their story independently themselves, that these people decided to destroy this story for the benefit of the current power class that we're living under. This story was censored right before an election, and let's be honest here, it played a key role in the election of the current president of the United States, as we're also finding out, according to the latest poll numbers, that 79% of Americans say that a truthful coverage of the Hunter Biden laptop story would have changed the 2020 election. And I think it's fair to say that if people found out about the very gross, nasty, nefarious, insider business dealings between the Biden family and China and Ukraine and other foreign countries and many other private interests, that yeah, of course, I think this is more than fair to say, this would have been very bad for Joe Biden, but because of the FBI, because of Facebook, because of the corporate media, because of people denying you the truth, that story never got out there to anyone, and Facebook censored it, Twitter censored it, you couldn't even mention it, you couldn't even talk about it online, and now in the face of all of this, Facebook is deciding, hey, we're actually going to censor you even more, even when you're not wrong. Now already, I would argue, many of the things that they fact check, many of the things that they go after, one, are memes completely out of context that they don't understand. Two, usually highly political issues that they want to cover up. And three, there are some rare instances of some Looney Tune crazy aunt sharing some made up theory that of course many people weren't taken seriously anyway. But Facebook has decided to go further now and has announced that they will let fact checkers comment on posts that, quote, may not be verifiably false. Yes, even though you're telling the truth, even though you have evidence, even though you have photos, even though you have videos, even though you're telling the truth, fact checkers could now come into your post and make sure everyone reads their propaganda before hearing whatever you wanted to send out there to the general public. Again, nefarious is one way of describing it. Absolutely draconian and evil is another one. And I think this meme perfectly highlights the dystopian nightmare that we are dealing with that is only starting to begin, as of course we are on the forefronts of the fourth industrial revolution, which I'm going to be talking about in just a little bit. But again, we have to understand that a lot of this fervor, a lot of this anger, a lot of this made up absolute nonsense dribble that is never fact checked is still being spewed on big tech social media, just like Keith Olbermann, that is literally now trying to tell us that the former president of the United States is in effect a real foreign spy. Yes, these are the words of Keith Olbermann, who clearly is just making things up. Clearly, there's no facts, there's no evidence, there's no document. Show me something that proves he's a foreign spy. Again, ridiculous claims. Why don't these claims get fact-checked? Because they don't question the narrative and agenda. And, of course, when claims, assertions, stories, news articles, videos, and photos question the official narrative, then they, of course, get fact-checked. But we have to understand, we're dealing with an absolutely hypocritical system that is purely focused and bent on you believing whatever version of events they want you to believe in order to confuse you so you don't see the reality of the current absolute craziness that we are dealing with in our modern day society. By the way, the FBI just confirmed that Ashley Biden's diary is legitimate, that Joe Biden did have inappropriate actions with her. And where's the new scandal? Where's the headlines? When you're looking for sensationalistic, eye-catching headlines, this is one of them. But it's nowhere to be seen on the mainline corporate media. Again, long history here. And this is why independent media is more important than ever, as of course, we are working tirelessly almost every single day to try to uncover what's really happening. And of course, against the massive amount of crap and phoniness all out there in our society. You could break through the matrix, actually. You could actually call out a lot of the phoniness, a lot of the bullcrap, a lot of the fakeness in our society, just by also wearing a shirt. And thebestpoliticalshirts.com is the website, and what I described to you is almost the exact opposite thinking by, of course, the Davos World Economic Forum that literally talks about how there's too many people in this world, how there's going to be a bunch of useless people in this world, and how we need to pacify them with either drugs or video games, or in some later conversations, the World Economic Forum even talked about reducing the Earth's population, which I think is a core concept and idea shared by many globalists, by many technocrats, by many individuals who, of course, want to live forever. And the larger question is, how will they be able to live forever? There's nothing that has been capable of allowing humans to have this godlike power and authority, which brings up a lot of complex moral questions that I think people should be asking themselves. This, as the latest news coming in today, is that Jared Kushner, the man who openly brags about giving Saudi Arabia a good weapons deal, the man who openly lobbies for the bombing of sovereign countries, the man that is known as being the most establishment shill of them all inside of the Trump administration, has come out and announced that he's trying to keep his body in shape because one day he might become immortal. Yes, you heard that correctly. We're hearing from Jared Kushner that he is prioritizing exercise in his life after leaving the White House because he could live forever. And what he's talking about is not out of the realm of any kind of possibility. It's not just science fiction, but it's the actual reality that also has been discussed by, of course, the World Economic Forum and their technological revolution, which coincides with, of course, their fourth industrial revolution, their population control beliefs, virtual reality, living in pods, and, quote, creating a sustainable society where the ruling elites get to live like gods and everyone else is forced to minimize their activities, their abilities, their freedoms to literally not having any privacy, not owning anything, and allegedly being more happier than ever. Well, maybe if you're on the drugs that Yuval Harari wants you to take. And we have to understand, the story that we shared in the beginning of this broadcast plays a role in this, because when we look at the online digital space, the environment that has been created is the environment that, of course, they're going to be replicating. An environment that is heavily censored, an environment that is tightly controlled by some nefarious forces out there that are using it for their own benefit, that are breaking rules, that are violating laws, that are destroying human rights, that are destroying the civil liberties, all in the name of using and abusing our online platform for their own personal benefit. Just recently, we learned that the White House was the one that was responsible for the banning of former New York Times journalist Alex Berenson. Just recently, we found out that it's also the Federal Bureau of Investigations that was the agency responsible for the censorship of the Hunter Biden story. And with our current space is building up to be total totalitarian hellscapes, how do you think the fourth industrial revolution will play out as, of course, the individuals in control of our current institutions that are destroying them are the ones calling for their expansion and their more prevalence in your everyday life. Now, you might want to consider that every time you share your data, your information with a lot of these big tech social media companies that are championing the goals of the World Economic Forum, working with them. Another person that was working along the same lines as the World Economic Forum, that was connected to a lot of the individuals in that organization,